So hey guys, welcome to another Warframe video, and the Prime Vault has opened yet again, and this time around it's spat out Mirage and Banshee Prime. So let's quickly talk about the packs and then we can talk about the actual gear. So we started off with the dual pack. This is the biggest one for 60 bucks, and this one has 1200 platinum and everything that was released with this unvaulting. So Mirage, Banshee and all their stuff. This then breaks down to the smaller $40 pack. So the one for Banshee has 400 platinum, Banshee, Helios, Euphona and Deconstructor Prime, as well as the accessories. The Mirage one also comes with 400 platinum and of course Mirage Prime, Kogake Prime, Akbolto Prime and then all the accessories. And finally we have the smallest $20 packs which have just the accessories. So for Banshee we have 200 platinum as well as the Capella Prime Seandana and the Ictus Prime Sentinel accessories. And for Mirage we have 200 platinum, the Abera Prime Seandana and the Atavis Prime armor. Now Mirage for me is just a fun multiplier. I mean, it's even what my primary setup on her is called, where I go for maximum beef with shields as well as duration to take advantage of Hall of Malevolence, and she just, she takes dumb fun weapons and makes them dumber and funner. It's of course not the only way to build her. There are some more viable, more reasonable and more meta builds you can go for, but for me Mirage is just all about fun. Akbolto Prime is one of my personal favorites. It's just a really good feeling and sounding weapon, and I personally like to go for a crit setup, mainly because I also have a really strong crit riven, but it has enough status to where you can go with a hybrid setup as well. All in all, just a really solid pair of semi-automatic akimbo pistols that fire bolts that do have travel time, but they can also pin enemies to walls. And finally we have the Kogake Prime, a pair of sparring melee weapons. Now sparring weapons are really fun because the stances make you kind of break down enemies to death. They're very flaily and really fun, and as far as the Kogake is concerned, you can either do what I did with it and just go full on status, or you can try to brute force crit, even though the crit chance and crit multiplier aren't great. Now when it comes to recommendations for this gear, it's really up to you. Just do you like the look of it? Do you like the sound of it? Then just get it, because while these are great, none of them are really game breaking. I mean, Mirage Prime is just Mirage with a fancy hat. Akbolto Prime are solid, but they're not the best, and Kogake Prime are really fun, but they're not the best. They're still really good though, so if you like the look of them, definitely check them out. Moving on to Banshee and stuff. So Banshee is a little bit more versatile than Mirage because she has a ton of different builds that you can go for. For me personally, Banshee is just a speedrunning frame for defense, which is why I run the Resonating Quake setup. But she's also pretty solid when it comes to farming focus, or doing a ton of damage, or even stripping the enemy armor in a pretty sizable area with a single cast. The only downside here is that while she can deal with groups of enemies and she can deal with damage, she is still really squishy underneath all of that, so you're gonna have to be a little bit careful here. Moving on to Euphona, which is a secondary hand cannon, I think is the best way to describe it, that has two fire modes. The primary one has really good crit stats and really high damage, and it fires a Solak that has travel time and is affected by gravity. The primary mode, on the other hand, is a fairly short-ranged shotgun blast that trades some of that crit for status instead. So when it comes to the build, you can kind of pick and choose. You can either go heavy crit for the primary, heavy status for the secondary, or try to mix them and use both. And finally we have Helios Prime. Now Helios is just great. He sits there and he will scan things for you. So every time new content comes out and you want to scan stuff for your simulacrum or just finish the codex, pick Helios so he will scan stuff and you don't have to sit there with a scanner yourself. That's not to say that all he will do is scan though, because you can also equip him with the Deconstructor Prime, the weapon he comes with, which is a glyph that has decent status, so you can actually mod it to proc some status on enemies, as well as get some minor stat stick functionality out of this, because if you equip the Gladiator mods on the Deconstructor Prime, they will affect your Warframe and your Warframe's melee weapon as well, so you can get a mini Blood Rush effect for essentially free. Now, as I've said already, I mostly use Banshee to speedrun defense missions, because if you mod her Quake well and you use the augment, it would decimate an entire defense wave in just a few seconds. Though it unfortunately doesn't scale too terribly well, so once the enemies are higher level, it won't be as effective, so it's mostly for lower level stuff, so normal star chart stuff. My biggest problem with Banshee personally is that she's just squishy and I like chunky frames, but that's more of a personal preference thing. I just don't like squishy frames. Now when it comes to Euphona Prime, it's first of all kind of unique because it doesn't actually have a non-pride version, there's just the pride version of it, but it's also an absolute beast of a weapon. I mean, this used to be the go-to weapon for idle hunting for quite a while. It just does ludicrous amounts of damage. And Helios, well, it's Helios, he scans stuff, he's really useful and saves you a lot of time staring down the scanner. Plus, Deconstructor Prime, once again, decent weapon, does decent damage, has good status, and you can use it as a stat stick for gladiator stuff. Now, there doesn't seem to be any restriction when it comes to farming the relics, so my go-to would probably be the Void, because in the Void you are guaranteed a relic at the end of the mission. So if you do something like hip it, you can get a relic in under a minute, and you can farm them really fast, Lith relics in this case, or even Meso and Neo relics, I do believe, if you do Yuko instead. But you know, you can kind of do whatever you want, because relics nowadays are really easy to get, so you can do Io on Jupiter, or Xenio on Ares, or hell, even Hydron if you want Neo relics, and just do disruptions. Just everything gives you relics nowadays. It's not that difficult to farm them. So yeah, there you go. That's pretty much it. So I thank you very much for watching as always, guys. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and I will see you some other time. Bye bye.